Just grabbing one more thing.
Well, we're not doing anything until everyone's at the table.
Gets done when houses.
Would you mind turning your name around so everyone can see it?
I thought it was on both.
Thank you. I know you know who you are. It's just that they don't know who you are. You will be known by the end of this meeting. Okay. We're just about ready. Are we unmuted?
Yes.
Thank you. April 16th, 2024 Budget Committee meeting is now called to order. Is there any conflict of interest declared by anybody? I hear none. I now call for a nomination of a chairperson. Somebody has to nominate someone.
Explain parameters of the duties of a chairperson.
They run the meeting.
Thank you.
I nominate Paulina.
Can we get a second?
I will second that.
All those in favor, no discussion allowed. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Would you like a list of what to do, or can you,
I'm gonna go by the agenda.
you got an agenda?
I do.
Oh, good, then go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need a nomination for the election of a secretary or recorder for the meeting.
I nominate Justine.
She can't be the recorder because she is the budget officer.
Oh,
So you have to, you're not gonna do anything because we have a Zoom meeting, we're recording it. Whoever gets nominated is just going to be a stick figure on the paper. That's the way I look at it. A stick figure. Because I'm not drawing anything else.
I would say they might go through the minutes of this meeting.
then I nominate Jennifer Gray.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Sorry, boss. I kind of jumped the gun there.
I have a question because I'm brand new at this. How much detail are you asking for?
What I would suggest that you do is when Justine does minutes for the meeting, that maybe she would give you a call and you could come in and just take a read of them for clarity, misspellings, just an overread, basically. Because she's got, for content, she's got she's got the record to refer to, so.
Okay, just coordinate with her.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, I'll do that.
Next on the agenda is to receive the budget message from the budget officer.
One little housekeeping thing before I read the budget message is that I just kind of want to go over the documents that are in front of you. So we have the, first, what's first? Then we have the budget narrative, which is what I'll be reading, which is significant changes or things that I think should be noted in the budget from last year. And then we have the budget document, and then you have an envelope. That envelope doesn't have to be opened tonight. That envelope is the budget committee's homework. So those are the revenue share applications, and I kind of typed up just a little help sheet for you in there. And hopefully when you come back at the next meeting, you will have some ideas about how you'd like to see those state revenue allocations distributed to some of our grant awardees. And we'll have a public hearing and talk with those people. So that was the support for you, to look through the ask questions later on, something that we're going to look at. And then we are going to turn to the budget message, which is, there's the cover page, the table of contents, the budget calendar, and then the budget message. And I will read it out loud to you. Budget message fiscal year 2024-2025. The general fund is projected to carry forward a strong beginning fund balance. Property tax and transient room tax are two of the largest sources of revenue, but both have growth restraints. In looking to the future, the city will have an obligation to balance limited resource streams with rising expenditure costs. This budget is prepared with overall general fund resources increasing by only 0.038%, while personnel expenditures increased by 11.72%. This means other budget categories like materials and services and capital outlay had to be reduced to make up for the increase in personnel costs. In July 2025, the city anticipates increases in the employer's portion of the public employees retirement system rates, which will add more financial pressure on limited resources. The city council understands Gearhart constrained resource growth and is open to exploring all options to increase revenue streams. Overall, resources are projected to be stable and the general fund is expected to adequately meet expenditures. The city of Gearhart is excited to enter the new fiscal year fully staffed. Staff can finally shift focus from recruitment to building collaborative teams. This budget was prepared with a 3.2% cost of living salary increase, which is established by the 2024 COLA by the Social Security Administration. Beyond the COLA changes, the city's salary schedule continues to be evaluated and adjusted. It should provide a competitive wage that retains employees as well as aligns salaries that have the same level of job responsibility. The salary schedule lines that have been adjusted are the chief of police and the division chief of training and operations. Another budgetary goal is to stay within overtime appropriations. Last year, the water operating fund was financially unstable and was in jeopardy of failing to meet financial obligations. After working with a specialized water rate professional, it was evident that a water rate increase would be necessary. The city council recognized the urgency and immediately implemented a 15% rate increase in August of 2023. Upon continued discussions, it was determined that encouraging water conservation was also prudent, which led to the approval of conservation block pricing in January of 2024. Cost inflation is continuing to take its toll on products and services as the price of transportation, supplies, materials, and personnel costs increase. The Public Works Director strives to minimize expenses while supporting aging water treatment equipment and limited water production rights. The City Council is also working hard to find alternative ways to provide affordable water options to the community, but it takes time. A groundwater modeling service contract has been approved and the results will be submitted to the Oregon Water Resource Department in hopes of increasing Gearhart's production levels. To keep building financial stability, this budget is prepared with a proposed water-based rate increase of 10%. The City Council has been actively engaged in supporting a bench project over this last year, which would incorporate existing benches and newly placed benches. An ad hoc bench committee was formed, collected data, and presented a framework for the city to move forward. In March, the City Council approved the recommendations of the budget committee to direct staff to order benches, apply for required permits for each due placement, and to proceed with existing bench restoration. This program will require a dedicated special revenue fund for clear accountability. Bench Program Fund 41 is being proposed. Because this project did not have allocations assigned in the 2023-24 budget, except for a private donation received from a park and bench restoration project, It should not be fully implemented until after July 1, 2024. Fund transfers are vital to our reserve accounts. The city's reserve funds ensure that the city reserve funds ensure that there are resources available when there are emergencies or failures of expensive items. Regular operating budgets often do not have adequate appropriations. Transfers in the general fund are allocated as follows, but with the caveat of not to exceed. $10,500 to the police car reserve fund, $30,000 to the fire apparatus, $20,000 to the building reserve fund, $18,600 to the bench fund, and $23,000 to the water reserve fund. Transfers in the water reserve fund are allocated with the same caveat of not to exceed.
Shoot.
Yeah.
23,000 or 230,000?
Sorry, 230,000. Sorry. Transfers in the water reserve fund are allocated with the same caveat of not to exceed. 40,000 to the water reserve fund and 7,500 to the public works major equipment reserve fund. There is also a proposed transfer of 25,000 from the Gerhart Road District to the water reserve fund. It is essential to note that if targeted financial markers are not adequately being met in the funds, transfers will either not be made or modified. The city has committed to spending the American Rescue Plan funding on water improvement investments. These funds, which amount to $362,935.78, must be spent on very specific types of projects and be allocated by December 31st, 2024. Resources have already been received in previous fiscal years and placed in several different funds, which will require transfers. The budget is prepared with transfers of all the American Rescue Plan resources to the Water Reserve Fund. The transfers have already been referenced above and impact the general fund, the Water Reserve Fund, and the Gerhart Road District Fund. The City Council has begun the process of planning for a safe public service facility to provide a functional working environment for our fire and police departments. The city has prioritized community input as a key component in the planning process. They have approved moving forward with hiring an owner's representative to provide professional expertise and assist with developing a community engagement plan. Allocations of $150,000 have been appropriated in the Building Reserve Fund in the account Public Safety Facility Project, which includes some preliminary contracted services. An example is owner's representative and architect. Consistently watching our budget is vital. Department heads and the City Council review a financial snapshot every month. Budgets are only an estimate that do provide a framework and pathway to achieve city goals. When there are limited resources, adjustments must be made to balance the budget. No services or safety standards were compromised in this budget. We look forward to another year serving our community. The proposed budget is financially solid. So that's our budget message. Now I will go through the budget. And I prepared the budget narrative, and I'm not the greatest public speaker, so and I get very nervous, so I'm going to read my budget narrative. What I would encourage you to do is, this is our first meeting. I would encourage you to have a highlighter. I would encourage you to have your post-it notes. I would encourage you, as I'm reading along, highlight things. You're certainly welcome to interrupt me if you want further clarification. We'll do a question time afterwards, but if there's anything that you need from me before that, please interrupt me. Let's find my place back in my reading. It's a lot of information to take in at once. And so my goal and the reason why I do the budget narrative is so that you kind of have an opportunity to hear it out loud. And then you have an opportunity to go home, spend about a month thinking about it. Maybe community members might ask you something, maybe you need additional information and need to come in, or would like to speak with one of our department heads, or gather information, all of which is appropriate, so. Off we go. A budget document is a written guideline outlining the city's comprehensive fiscal picture for the next operating year. Oregon budget law specifies a process and recommended format for the city's annual budget. The accounting system is structured to maintain the identity of the revenues for the resources and expenditures for each fund. This is accomplished by providing a balancing set of accounts. Every fund within our budget must be balanced, which means that revenues must equal expenditures. The city uses a cash basis of accounting. The city of Gerhardt's budget has the following fund categories. The general fund. This fund is the city's largest fund with the most transactions. It documents the general operating funds and expenditures and is considered the city's primary accounting fund. The city of Gerhardt's general fund is divided into departments. So we have the administrative, the police, the fire, the non-departmental, municipal court, planning, and parks. Building used to be in there, but it has been moved out of the general fund because of some legislative changes, and now we have a new Fund 40 in special revenues. The debt service fund, debt service fund 20 accounts for the general long-term debt obligations. These expenditures are the primary principal and interest payments due for the construction of the water treatment facility. 3, enterprise funds. These funds are used to account for business-like activities provided to the general public. These activities are financed primarily by user charges, and the measurement of financial activity focuses on net income measurements similar to the private sector. The city has Water Operating Fund 30 and Water Reserve Fund 71. Our Water Improvement Construction Fund is no longer in, it's still in here, but it has been eliminated because that project was for the water treatment building it, and we transferred all that money out, but we have some historical data. Special funds, these funds account for special revenue sources that are legally restricted to expenditures for specific purposes to finance particular functions or activities of the city. The city of Gerhardt has building, Fund 40, Bench Fund 41, State Revenue Sharing Fund 45, State Street Fund 60, Public Works Major Equipment Reserve Fund 78, and Gerhardt Road District Fund 50. Capital Projects Fund. These funds account for financial resources used to acquire, construct major capital facilities and or acquire capital assets. The city of Gerhardt has the Police Car Reserve Fund, the Fire Apparatus Equipment Reserve Fund, Hazardous Mitigation Fund, and the Building Reserve Fund. The overall format of the budget has remained the same, but there continues to be refinement on description, headings, and combining accounts. Department heads are encouraged to merge similar accounts, still maintaining the transparency of the type of purchase, work to make account descriptions uniform across departments, and eliminate counts that are not necessary. Please note that the only important or significant changes will be presented during the budget meeting. However, requests for additional information or questions are always welcome. Before I begin discussing specifics, I'd like to give an overview of the payroll cost factors that impact almost every fund and are represented in personal services. This will stop us from having to hear it over and over and over every time because they all increase proportionately the same. The budget has been prepared with the following payroll assumptions. The city of Gerhardt is budgeting a 3.2% cost of living salary increase with anniversary steps when applicable, with an established 2024 COLA by the Social Security, which is established by the 2024 COLA by the Social Security Administration and sanctioned in the employee handbook. So we have a salary schedule, and on their anniversary date, they move over because of a year of experience, if it's applicable. Workers' compensation rates have been increased by a projected 5%. Retirement, the city of Dearborn participates in the public employer retirement system to provide a retirement plan for employees. There are 3 separate employer rates, tier 1, 2, OPSERP, and OPSERP police fire, to which employers contribute a percentage of the employee's salary. Each benefit program has a different assigned employer rate that is determined by the PERS board, which is approved each by voting. The employer rates effective July 1 will remain the same this next year. So for tier 1, tier 2, it was 25.10%. For OPSERP general, it is 18.22%. And for OPSERP police and fire, it's 23.01. So no PERS rates have changed. Of course, they go up because salary goes up, so they go up, but those rates are locked this year. It's important to note that based on current estimates, the PERS actuary projects a system-wide average employer rate of 27% next year, so effective July 1. Insurance benefits, medical, dental, vision, life, accidental death and dismemberment, and long-term disability. We participate in are members of CIS. And they were formed to provide insurance to municipalities. Insurance is provided to all full-time employees. This budget includes a monthly employer contribution of up to $2,705 per employee. And the average rate increase on the premium is estimated at 8.4. So medical may have gone up 10, dental may have gone up 6, vision may have gone up 8. So I just averaged them. That's 8.4% are the projections. Unemployment rates and workers' comp benefit fund tax have been budgeted with very slight decreases. The city is aware of the Oregon paid leave, and you may hear that term. Our employees do have to contribute, but because we're such a small employer, we don't have to pay the employer portion. So we're gonna go to page 1. Line 1. Resources, beginning fund balance, cash on hand. The city is anticipating a strong ending fund balance. Key factors for this are continued strong transient room tax collection and revenues received from previous fiscal years that were not spent by June 30th. So we have some funds in there that are restricted. Duncan's Crossing, Pickleball, American Rescue Plan, Parks, and bench program. And we'll talk about some of those a little bit later. Resources, line 2, property tax was budgeted at a 3% with a reduction for discounts and other uncollectible amounts. The city's permanent tax rate is 1.0053 per thousand of assessed value. At this point, the Clatsop County Assessor's Office does not see any significant impacts on property tax. However, they did indicate that Georgia Pacific remains a factor in coming years. They have applied for a new strategic investment program that will reflect on the 26-27 tax years, and that is for the next 15 years. And there's an article in the Daily Historian about it, which I thought was interesting. So that's coming. Resources, line 3, property tax prior. Please note that when looking at the historical data, 2022-23 had additional prior year payments due to a refund credit for some final appeals resolutions with CenturyLink and Georgia Pacific. So we had gotten some extra payments that year. So it kind of makes the history look a little funny. Resources, line 4, 5, 6, and 7, building. Please note that a revenue line for the building plan review, line 5, had to be added for historical data. Also, as reported last year, new legislation requires us to track differently, the building department. So we have moved those to its own fund, but we have to keep them for historical until those are met. Resources, line 8, franchise CenturyLink Quest has been reduced based on continued decreases in this type of franchise fee. Resources 13 and 4 grants have no allocation, but must remain for historical retention requirements. Resources line 15, grant fire staffing has been added. Because it continues to be a regular resource stream and has already been approved for the next fiscal year, it's been added as an independent revenue account. Resources line 16, grant restricted resources have been allocated. This allows the city a convenient way to accept any future grant awards. It provides appropriation for specific restricted grants that haven't been awarded. They are classified as potential future grants. Resources line 17, interest. Interest has continued to outperform expectations for us. According to the state of Oregon's last revenue outlook, the just completed fiscal year 2023 interest earnings for Oregon were more than the state received in the previous 10 years combined. So it's been pretty phenomenal. Resources line 19, conflagration and mobilization allocations are revenues reimbursed by the state of Oregon for Gerhardt firefighters and equipment that are deployed to wildfire incidences. Resources line 22, other GRFPD. The Gerhardt Rural Fire Protection District has an agreement with the Gerhardt Fire Department to provide fire prevention, protection, suppression aid, and emergency medical response for their tax-paying district. Resources line 26, other technology fees have been added. The city imposed a technology fee on certain planning activities when we implemented the new software on Acela. So there are certain activities that you do that a technology fee is assessed. And so that is put in here. It had also had fees because it was towards the end of last year, so it actually had some historical data. Resources line 27 and 28. Other have had no allocations assigned because the city does not anticipate receiving any revenues from these types of sources. However, they must remain for historical requirements. Resources line 31, marijuana tax has been adjusted. Based on anticipated collections, the amount has been reduced. According to the League of Oregon Cities, marijuana revenue has seen a downward trend since the market is saturated with an oversupply of product, which has driven prices down. Also, please note that the city received a large payment from the state of Oregon in the 21-22 fiscal year for local tax being incorrectly collected at the state level over several periods. That was just a one-time payment to get us caught up, but it makes the historical data look a little funny there. Resources line 32, tax Oregon Liquor Commission, Control Commission tax. There is not as much anticipated revenue growth in this source because according to the LOC, changes made during the 2021 legislative session to increase compensation to liquor store agents and distillery tasting room owners has reduced net distributions from this revenue source. So they actually projected that the revenue was going to go up in liquor tax, but it's literally like because of prices, but we are going to see less because they've redistributed it a little bit differently. Resources line 33, transient room tax continues, this is on the next page, continues to be a lucrative revenue source. Revenue collections have been steady. And I did a report as of 3/30, and as of 3/30, we were almost like $700 equal with last year's at the exact same quarter and the exact same day. So steady, we like to see that. And overall, the general fund resources show a growth of $1,147.54. So not much growth there.
May I ask
All
one
less than the
question?
minuses. Yes.
So, earlier in the year, the tax assessors came to my house.
Yes.
Did what I thought was a rather thorough
Yes.
look-see. And was telling me things like, oh, that half bath I have, that's now considered a full bath. And oh, those porches you have, they have roofs over them, so they are a covered porch. Just, it made me think, oh my God, I'm gonna be paying a bunch of more money.
Correct. It's likely that's true.
So is that reflected? Because I didn't see that.
So what happens is, we project with a 3% the count well, the state of Oregon gives you like a calculator to project what you think your collections are going to be next year. We project 3%, but this last year, we grew by 4%. Why did we grow by 4% when there is a cap on 3% growth? Because of reassessments, because of new houses being added in. So what happens is that gets submitted to the assessor's office. It increases the value of your assessed and it goes into our taxable revenue.
But your statement was that it really isn't changing.
It'll change 3%, I mean, for at least 3%.
So we could get more than what's reflected
We
here.
could get more, yes.
And when will we know that?
We know that when we get our tax, we submit everything, I think we get our tax sheets. Maybe in August or September, we'll know what the growth rate was.
But it'll be after this is passed.
Correct.
Okay,
So basically, it's a conservative estimate. Gerhart tends to be a pretty strong growth. But we can't really afford to risk inflating the number. It's better to keep it where we know it will be, not less than that, than to try to make it higher.
was it like a concerted effort to get everybody's, I wasn't just my
No,
house?
I think Gerhart, Cannon Beach had been selected many years ago, like several years ago, and they had indicated that Gerhart over a 3-year period was going to do, they just pick places and start doing reassessments.
Okay,
But it's helpful.
is this
for
year one
taxes.
then, over the 3 years?
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
But unless she's remodeled or done something different, she's capped at what they can.
Correct,
So
exactly.
unless you've redone your house, yes, you might see an increase if they assess it at more. But where you see the larger than 3% is people like me who recently remodeled and they come in and they say your house is worth so much more than it was before.
Correct.
Correct.
Under resource line 2 property tax, what is the, what are we talking about, Georgia Pacific?
So
Okay.
Georgia Pacific is within the boundaries of Clatsop County. So when they do SIP, it puts compression on all of the taxing districts in there. It's just like when CenturyLink and an appeal is filed, the county caps the amount of money that they get, and it doesn't get distributed out to local entities, local taxing districts. It goes, and the SIP is different because the obligation is that Georgia Pacific push it back out into the community. And I haven't read a lot on it. I just saw the article today. I'm not sure what their intent is with it. But it caps the growth.
But they own property in the county, which is kind of distributed to the, in some form to the municipality.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. We're on to page 3. This fund is supportive of all departments within the general fund. Collected costs that are not easily identified by departments, like utilities, some utilities, office equipment, insurance, and office supplies, are charged to this category. Personnel services expenditures, you don't see this line in here. It was benefit auditors adjustment. It has been removed because it was no longer necessary and there was no historical data. So if you compare to last year, it's not in here anymore. Materials and services expenditure line 16, legal services have been decreased. The city now has a retainer-based agreement with the city attorney. We divide that retainer between administrative and planning. Materials and services expenditures line 17, consumable supplies / materials have been reduced. Materials and services line 19, telephone has been reduced. The city has moved to a new VoIP system and each department is allocated some of the monthly costs. And there's also an independent phone line for fax purposes that we have to keep for our credit card machine for security reasons. So we also have a fax line in there. Materials and services equipment, line 20, utilities. Utility and gas has been reduced based on historical data. Materials and services expenditures, line 22, materials and consumable supplies general has been combined with the consumable supplies materials to eliminate redundancy. It will remain in the budget until the historical data is no longer required. Materials and services expenditures, line 23, insurance, property, liability, and auto has been increased. The line item includes all of the liability responsibilities of all the departments except water. According to preliminary rate information released at CIS's renewal strategy meeting, the large premium increases are due to the overall trust performance, and they cited claim activity and value inflation. Materials and services expenditures, line 24, City Hall maintenance has been decreased. Maintenance and service expenditures, line 25, purchase services has been reduced. This account supports professional contract services like our janitorial service here at City Hall, window washing and yard maintenance. Materials and services expenditure, line 29, elected official expenses provides the city council and mayor an opportunity for professional development, reasonable reimbursements, and or community outreach. I feel like this is really important since we have such a young city council that they oftentimes need opportunities to be able to go and meet and see other people in cities and see what's going on. So we increased that slightly. Materials and services expenditures, line 30, professional services was combined with purchase services last budgeting cycle, so we just have to keep it through the retention period. Materials and services expenditures, line 32, payroll processing. I renamed this. It was assisted payroll processing. We use a software called QuickBooks, and we use them for payroll related services. So I process the payroll, but they do things like the direct deposit, and they electronically file some of our things for us. Materials and services expenditures, line 33. Dues and fees have been reduced. This account is primarily used for service fees, so our credit card machine and bank service fees for like ACHs and things. The largest contributor of the credit card usage fee is the building department. And so when they moved to their own fund, we now moved all of those charges over to their fund. So we reduced that. Page.
Justine,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, on that
No.
page, was there a reason that there was nothing stated about line 30, the increase in line 31?
We just have increasing technology needs.
Right,
And so
Right.
there wasn't anything significant about it. So no.
okay. Only that you made editorial comments on all the other lines.
Sure.
I wondered if there was a reason you didn't talk that one.
No, there was no reason.
Okay,
I see technology is insignificant to me, I guess, because I just need it. So I'm just looking at everything. Page 5, building department, nothing there. We moved this fund, so we should have all the time there. Page 6, the police department, personnel services, expenditure line 2, salary chief of police has been adjusted to maintain a competitive wage and align salaries between city positions that have the same level of responsibility. This wage has been equalized with the fire chief's salary schedule. Personal services expenditure line 3, police officers. Please note that for historical reference, the city had an open unfilled FTE for 2 years of historical data. Personnel expenditures line 4, overtime payment. Although this account has been historically over budget, hopefully because of the lack of having a third officer, moving forward with a fully staffed department, the goal would be to stay within budgeted amounts. Personnel expenditures line salary group. Okay, these are not in your budget. So the salary relief police, the cops grant, and the traffic safety grant overtime allocations were eliminated last year, and they have been deleted because they don't have any budgeted amounts or historical data. Materials and supplies expenditures line 14, legal services have no allocations. If services are needed, they are covered under the city attorney's retainer agreement. Materials and supplies expenditures line 15, consumable supplies and materials have been reduced. Many of the general supplies of all the departments are purchased under the administrative department's budget. Materials and supplies expenditure line 16, telephone has been increased. As mentioned earlier, the city has changed telephone providers. And this account represents both VoIP system and city provided cell phones. So our officers have cell phones and we charge part of the landlines VoIP system. Materials and supplies line 20, professional development has been decreased. Materials and supplies line 21. Educational materials have no allocations. Officers still have access to educational materials through consumable supplies, professional development, and or technology software. Materials and supplies, line 22, uniform PPE has been decreased. Materials and supplies, this line is not in the budget. Uniform cleaning and the Clatsop County Drug Task Force, they've been deleted. They didn't have anything budgeted for historical data. Materials and supplies, line 24, purchase services have been increased. Police staff anticipate the need to continue a cooperative agreement with the Clatsop County Sheriff's Office. This account also provides support to continue working with Lexipol to keep public safety policies updated and compliant, as well as provide access to training. Materials and services, line 26, technology, software and hardware has been increased. The city participates in a collaborative software with Clatsop County that may be changing, which will require some additional setup fees, and it will require a crossover, so we will have to pay for our old software and pay for our new software as we transition over. Materials and supplies, line 27, dues and fees were added last budgeting cycle. This is to provide an allocation for police professional service organizational membership dues. Capital outlay, line 30, has been reduced. And then we're page 7 and 8, fire department. Personnel services, line 3, salary, division chief and training operations has been adjusted to maintain a competitive wage and align salaries between positions within the city that have the same level of responsibility. This wage has been equalized with the police sergeant salary schedule. Personnel services, line 5, salary, overtime pay has been increased. Based on historical data, this account just keeps continuing to be over budget and it requires an adjustment. Personnel services expenditures, these are not in the budget. I've deleted them out because of no historical data, whereas firefighters incentive plan, it's been eliminated. Personnel services, line 6, conflagration / mobilization, and line 7, overtime. These expenditures are supported by general fund resources, but as a reimbursement expenditure, this means that organizations that need assistance must agree to reimburse the full amount of city personnel and equipment. The city budget needs to allocate these expenditures so that if our firefighters assist, they have appropriations and a tracking method. So we have revenue for them in the general fund and a line item, and then we have our salary line items for them. Personnel services, line 8, salary temporary grant labor has been added. These allocations are offset with revenue received by a grant. Because the grant has historical data, they did get it last year, and we already know they've been awarded for next year. It's been given a dedicated account. And they're supported in the general fund. You can go back and look at them. And the grant is for $35,000, but it's only 25 on this line item because the rest of it is distributed through the workers' comp, social security, PERS, unemployment. They don't have special lines, but the salary line is special, and we can pull reports to divide them out. But that's why there's a discrepancy. Materials and supplies, line 19, convention and administrative expenses was merged with professional development last year. This information, the information has to be kept for historical retention. Line 20, telephone has been reduced and allocations have been moved to line 36, technology, software and hardware. This account represents only the VoIP system charges. Historically, technology charges for the tablet had been charged though, so that's why the historical looks really high. They have tablets that they use and really they should be down in the technology section. Materials and supplies, line 27, professional development has been reduced based on historical data. Line 30, medical examinations has been reduced. Materials and supplies, line 31, EMS, equipment and operations has been increased. Materials and supplies, line 33, student intern program has been reduced. Materials and supplies, line 36, technology, software, hardware. As referenced in line 20, allocations have been moved here to accurately track for tablet usage. Materials and supplies, expenditures, line 37, purchase services have been added. This service provides for Lexipol. They have a an equivalent fire program, just like police, that they use for procedures, policies, and trainings. And a company called First Due, which they also use for training reporting. Materials and services, line 38, dues and fees have been added. This is to provide for an allocation for fire professional service organization dues. And line 41, capital outlay equipment has been reduced. Page 9, non-departmental. Materials and services, line 2, street lights have been reduced based on usage data. Line 4, restricted, has been allocated to allow for an anticipated. Has been allocated to allow for any unanticipated grants that may be received after the budget has been prepared. So this allows the city to accept the award and have appropriations to spend the award. So we talked about this in revenues where we put money, we don't know if we're gonna get the grant, there's just potentially future grants. We have to have revenues in the general fund. This is where the expenditures, and then we can do a resolution to move them to the individual departments. But this allows us at least to accept them and move forward with them quickly. Materials and services expenditures, these are not in the budget, I've deleted them out. Sidewalk repair, grant low moderate income support, and grant COVID business release. No historical data that need to be kept. Capital outlay, line 8, land purchase allocations have been moved. To maintain a balanced budget, reductions were necessary. If land purchases need to be made, the building reserve fund may be a viable option. Capital outlay expenditure, line 9, American Rescue Plan programs. The allocation has been removed and will be transferred to the Water Reserve Fund. No specific general fund projects have been established. Transfer expenditures 12 through 17, transfers, are essential accounts. However, due to critical general fund programs and services, concessions had to be made to prepare a balanced budget. Allocations are being put in line 12, police care, I have a hang up with care, reserve fund, line 13, fire apparatus equipment, reserve fund, and line 15, building reserve fund. There will be no allocations made to line 14, hazardous mitigation fund, and 2 new transfers have been allocated, line 16, bench fund, and line 17, water reserve fund, to allow for the transfer of already collected revenues that are in the city's beginning fund balance. Please note that the highest priority is maintaining financial stability. If financial targets aren't met, transfers will either be modified or eliminated. Page 10, municipal court, personal services, line 11, FTE has been modified to 0.10, 0.10, whatever. which was required to better allocate for the amount of time that positions require. This is part of a 1.0 FTE, so it's shared by 3 departments. 0.10 goes to court, 0.45 goes to planning, and 0.45 goes to building. Material expenditures, line 14, printing and advertising have no allocations. It will remain in the budget for historical until it's no longer needed. Expenditure line 20, prosecution fees have no allocations. Line 21, technology and software has no allocations. It has no allocations because we don't pay for that software currently. It's under the police departments that she accesses. And we had intentions of looking at court software, but that's on our 5-year long-term plan, is to have an integrated software system. So we pulled that out because we're not going to do that next year. Page 11, planning department. Personal services, same comment, except we've adjusted for FTEs. We equalized a little bit more in planning and building, which you kind of spends an equal amount of time doing those. Materials and services, line 14, purchase service. The planning consultant has been reduced based on current this year's and last year's historical data. There was a shift in how we've been contracting that, and the price has dropped significantly for us. Materials and services expenditures, line 16, planning commission expenses have been reduced based on current and historical data, but no intent to put any pressure on that program because they'll still have plenty of money to meet their needs. Material and services expenditures, line 19, mapping allocations have been reduced. Again, just too much money being put in there. No changing in mapping services. Page 12, Parks Department. Materials and services, line 13, park maintenance and repair has been reduced. Line 14, fuel and vehicle maintenance has been increased and renamed. Last year it was vehicle/equipment maintenance. Because Public Works serves 3 departments, water, street, and parks, the district pool should be proportionately charged to each department. So this is the parks portion of that. Materials and services, line 17, grant, park and bench project. The allocations have been removed and will be transferred to the bench fund. We talked about that in non-departmental. Materials and services, line 20, equipment has been reduced. Page 13 and 14 are just summaries. You can look over them and it just kind of summarizes what we already went over. Nothing significant in our report I need to talk about. Page 15, debt service, fund 20, resources, line 1, beginning fund balance. Cash on hand accommodates for anticipated debt service payments that are needed in September, before the city's debt service property tax payments start coming in. It is higher than expected because the interest revenue has been unbelievable. So we had quite a bit of interest in there, and I just was not anticipating quite that much.
These are bonds for a water treatment facility.
Correct. Expenditures, line 28, total unappropriated fund balance represents the amount that we will need in September of 2025 before we get our money in November. So we need to figure that in our calculation. Page 16, this is to provide a breakdown of the principal, interest, and total debt service for any remaining debt service payments. And please note that the final payment on one of our water treatment general obligation bonds is next year. So one of them will drop off. Which means, page 17, water improvement construction fund. This is the one we talked about eliminating it. We'll see it for more years before it drops off. Pages 18, 19, and 20 are water operating fund. This fund accounts for activities for providing water services to the public. Resources, line 1, beginning fund balance, cash on hand. This amount is due to the support from rate increases. Warrington had granted us this year, even though we didn't know that at the time. They let us be in district rates, so a special government rate. And so we didn't have to spend as much money, and a budgeted transfer from the water reserve account. So we're counting on that balance to be that high. Resources line 3, water sales receipts. This account has been increased after a rate feasibility study and to provide financial stability. 2 types of rate increases were implemented in the 23-24 fiscal year. In August 2023, as I mentioned earlier, rates were increased by 15%, and then in January 2024, a conservation pricing went into effect. Based on requirements to keep the water operating fund solvent, as well as the goal to continue building water reserve funds, it is being recommended that a 10% increase on the base rate be implemented effective July 21st, 2025. We picked that date because that's a billing cycle date, so it just makes it easier for our system. Wait, it's 2024.
Yeah, I'm thinking that would be.
Yeah, that's not right. Sorry,
the worst.
2024. The budget is based on that assumption. Resources line 5 is the transfer from the water reserve. It has no allocations. And then we're gonna change pages.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The 10% increase in the water rate in July, that's already been approved by the council?
No. These are just proposed.
So will it happen with the budget then? Is it all part of the package?
No, we'll have to do a resolution if we do that.
But kind of at the same time?
Yeah. Correct. So this is my proposal. So we're on line 14,
Page 18.
page 19. Yeah, line 14. So the FTE breakdown, 1 director, 0.45 water clerk, and 3 staff at 0.55 make up that 3.1 FTE in there. So all 3 public works positions, each one is a 1 FTE, and they're divided out 0.10 parks, 0.55 water, and 0.35 street. So that's how that number comes about. Materials and services, this isn't in here, but the legal fees were eliminated and there was no historical data, so it's out. And legal services can be provided under city attorney's retainer agreement. Materials and services line 19, telephone has been adjusted. As mentioned earlier, the city has changed telephone providers. This account represents the water department's portion of the VoIP phone system. And charges for the tablet usage and internet have been moved to technology, software, hardware. Materials and services line 20, utilities, electricity and gas has been increased. Please note that when looking at the historical data, did I increase that?
Yes.
Line 20, okay. Okay, vehicle fuel was being charged to the account along with electricity and natural gas, but it has been moved to fuel vehicle maintenance last budgeting cycle. Materials and services expenditures line 22, supplies, services and chemicals have been increased. Materials and services line 28, professional development has been increased. Materials and services line 30, water treatment facility equipment maintenance was combined last budgeting cycle with system operations and repairs. Materials and services line 31, system operation and repairs has been increased. And it was modified last year and we increased a bunch of things which skews the historical look back when you look at the historical data on that account. Materials and services line 33, chemical water analysis has been increased. Services provided are assessing groundwater monitoring, surface water monitoring, and production well data in accordance with the Oregon Water Resource Department, or permit with them, as well as standard water treatment testing requirements. Materials and services line 34, purchase services, meter readers have been increased. Materials and services not in here was hydrants, and it has been eliminated. And no historical data. Materials and supplies, line 41, water building program has been increased. Materials and services, this is not in there anymore, was grants, American Rescue Project, because it was moved to the water reserve account. It will be removed because there was no historical data. Materials and services, line 43, technology, software, hardware have been added. This account will track fees for the internet and tablet usage needed by the water department. Capital expenditures, this line is not in there, it's been removed. Water, headworks, fence, and field equipment was eliminated last budgeting cycle, so it's no longer in here. It didn't have any data that required to be reported. Transfer line 50, transfers to the water reserve, and 51, transfer to the public works major equipment reserve fund, have allocations. However, the water operating fund must meet adequate financial markers or no transfer will occur. We're living in a perfect world, so we're hoping that everything goes in. Conservation blocking is both good and bad in the sense where we want people to conserve water, but at the same time, if they conserve water, it will decrease our rates. And we have not seen conservation blocking in yet. I mean, it's in now, but nobody's really using water like they do in the summer months, so. Yes,
Line 39, what is engineer?
that yeah, go ahead.
Engineering might be a project that Mark has to go through where you need to hire an engineer, when you make changes to a water treatment facility, we like to use our engineers.
And then Justine, I had a question on the water billing program. Is that the program? Can you explain the word program? Is that a software or is it?
The water, which one?
Line 41.
So the water billing program, we pay Springbrook, a software company, to use that. And then we also pay to use their Civic Pay, which is an online system, so that's charged in there. And then we also pay some fees for activities like ACHs and other things, and they're all in there.
Okay.
I think there's 3 separate people that we pay in that.
So it's just worthy of breaking it out rather than putting in 43.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I keep trying to decide as I'm here longer and longer, where to put things.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as transparency, I've tried to talk to the supervisors about, you want the consumer to know what that is, but at the same time, is it that relevant? And it's kind of a big expense, so we didn't merge it into technology, but it kind of could be.
Yeah, not buying or selling, just.
Yeah.
No, but
So
it's
the-
almost like services. It's like program
Yeah, it's like a
services.
Yeah.
Not like your own technology that you have to provide. You're like purchasing technology services.
Yeah.
So I think it's appropriate to.
Yeah.
I think it's just been separated out so that people can see how much it costs for us to have that software and software associated things. And if we have to pay for any type of programming or request any type of special report or anything like that, they invoice us through there, and when we put it in there in the water building, because it comes in that form.
And you'd be surprised how computers don't operate very well in a very wet environment, so occasionally we'll have to buy some new hardware.
Mhm.
See, so line 54, did I talk about everything then? No, I think it was at 54. Unappropriated ending fund balance. Ideally, the city would like to see 3 months of operating expenses in the ending fund balance. However, this fund has had some financial instability. With the transfer from the 2023 budget, Warrenton's water rates moving to out of district rates, so they are going to be out of district in this budgeting cycle. Increasing payroll costs, consistent rate increases, and the need to support city reserve funds, it will take time to stabilize this account. Our water reserve, our water specialist recommended, this could take 3 to 5 years in order to build back up. So we're hoping that all goes well, and now that we're on a cycle of at least evaluating rate increases, which we had neglected far too long, that maybe we don't have to keep increasing them 10%, that maybe we can start dropping them after that. That was also his recommendation. Page 21 and 22, building. The building department has traditionally been tracking the general fund. Due to the passage of Senate Bill 866, we had to pull it out because we have a third party contracting building official. So a lot of cities pay their building officials out of their payroll, and we just get an invoice submitted from them each month and 1099 and out at the end of the year. So because we do that, the state has required that we bring it out into a special fund. And the special fund needs to be self-sufficient, so they want us to make sure that we're being cognitive, that our revenues are actually matching our expenditures. This is new to us because before, when you're in the general fund, everything can mesh around, so you can borrow from others and ebb and flow between the departments. Now it is very black and white. And we have increased the types of accounts, and we have increased the different breakdowns to more accurately kind of see what we're doing. We have a new software system and it works great, and I've been very happy with it. But we're still working on historical data, so bear with me. Resources line 2 and 7. 2 through 7 have been modified as actual data from 2023 has been provided. So some of these we didn't really have a breakdown on, so we were just trying to kind of guess where the dollar amounts would be when we were budgeting. Now we have a better picture, so we've kind of tried to break them down a little bit more accurately, how we think they are going to look. We've added line 8 because it was just inadvertently missed last year. They will have interest too. We won't cheat them out of their interest. And line 11, we did adjust the FTE there compared to the page, compared to last year. And then line 13, consumable supplies has been reduced. Line 15 through 18 has been adjusted as actual data has been provided, so we've kind of adjusted.
Page 22.
Sorry. Yeah. They've been adjusted, lines 15 through 18. Line 20, technology, has been reduced. Materials and services, line 21, dues and fees. The city transition, like I said, to a new software, it's been great. It's a great tracking system. I actually can do several of my reports for money that we have to send to the state, pulling straight from that report. And it's been really nice. It breaks it down quite in detail. So it's been really handy. But it does have, on line 21, dues and fees. This is where it has all the transaction fees for credit cards. We don't pay for the software, but we have to pay for all the credit card fees. So we do have allocations in there for that. Page 23 is the bench program fund. City Council has approved the recommendation of the Gearhart Bench Committee to direct staff to order benches, apply for required bench permits for bench dune placement, and to proceed with existing beach restoration. This program will require a dedicated special revenue fund for clear accountability. Bench Program 41 is being proposed. This program did not have allocations in last year's budget, except for a private donation for the beach, the park and beach bench restoration project. This program should be fully implemented after July 1, 2024, with the approval of budget appropriations. Resources line 2 through 3, this represents anticipated revenues. because the program has been completely outlined. It hasn't been completely outlined yet. I mean, we have an idea, but we haven't pinpointed exact amounts. These are just rough estimates. Line 4 transfers, the represents currently available for the Park and Bench program, which was donated by the Shea Family Charitable Foundation Funds. So we would move that into this fund. Materials and services, line 13. Materials and supplies in line 14 have been added, and then we've added capital outlay. And line 20, unappropriated ending fund balance has been added, and this assumes that there'll be a maintenance agreement, because they'll pay in advance. So the idea of this is by July 1, we have everything up and running. We have all the service agreements, written. We have them maybe signed by these people, how much we're going to be charging them. And then we start putting the money in this bench program, and we purchase those benches, start placing those benches. The benches will not only have the purchase price, but they will also have, if it requires us to have special concrete or any type of footings, that would need to be included in the maintenance in the costs. Then we would also need to decide how long this is going to be for this maintenance agreement. And if we collect that money up front, which was one of the options that was brought up, then it would be over, if they have to pay, it costs $2,500 to have this memorial bench for 10 years, then that money would carry over to the next year, and we would have clear accountability for all of the bench fund money. We'll talk to our auditors, and they feel like that this is probably the best way for us to go, because we don't have any funds this year to purchase benches. So if we start off July 1 and we're ready to go, we should be able to have them up and running.
Get that process.
Yep. Pages 24 and 25 is state revenue sharing. And this is money that's given to the cities and from the state. And we are encouraged to incorporate this back into our local organizations. Materials and services, line fire, okay, so we're on the next page. Nothing unusual on that first page. So the second page, there was a line fire station building maintenance and CERT team and materials and services. They're eliminated in here. We had moved CERT to the fire department. And I'm not sure why these were in there, maybe
What page are you on?
25. So they're not on here. They were eliminated because they didn't have any data or any information. Materials and services, line 5 through 21, grants, local organizations. During the budget process, the city has a state revenue sharing public hearing so that local organizations have the opportunity to request funding from this fund. Anticipated grant allocations have been placed in line 4, and individual allocations are determined, or allotments are determined by the budget committee and approved by the city council. Last year, from line 6 to line 20, you approved $40,000 in local grant. And this year I am proposing 45 to 10. So we have the applications in your envelope, and we encourage you to take them home and look at them and allocate fund. I also increased celebration and materials and services to 3,000 because it feels like that people are getting enthusiastic about things happening more and more as things grow and become more exciting and bigger. So I just want to make sure that we have some extra funds to kind of push out and support the community there. I also like an appropriated ending fund balance on line 27 because it builds fund stability and it gives you a little bit of cushion in case for some reason your revenue doesn't come in right, then you're not really short the next year. So I think we should anticipate for an unappropriated ending fund balance.
You don't want us to spend that back then.
I don't want you to, but I can't stop you.
Mhm.
All I will tell you is that if the time comes when we don't have the 5,000, we're not allocating it, so. I'm not telling you you can't.
These are the list of people who put in an application.
Correct, well, no, there are people who were awarded, either awarded last year, had historical data, or are in the book.
Okay,
We have a new one this year, the wildlife bird,
Wildlife Center. Okay.
but they hadn't ever been allotted before, they're new to us, so.
okay, so down there.
But then like scholarships, he said scholarships didn't turn anything in. So they're still on there too.
Got it.
And the deadline's passed.
The deadline's passed. Yeah. Page 26 and 27, State Street Fund. State Street funds are part of the Oregon State Shared Revenues and support the construction, reconstruction, preservation, maintenance, repair, and improvements of streets and roads. It is distributed to Oregon cities based on a per capita distribution. I don't know if you listen to our city council meetings, but our city attorney is very on top of our distributions for this per capita. Revenue sources come from vehicle registration, title fees, driver's license fees, fuel tax, and weight mile tax. So resources on line 4, there was a small allotment grant that it's been removed because the grant is no longer available, but we needed to keep it because we had budgeted for it. So we'll need to keep it 1 more year before we can drop it off. Personnel services, that's just the, okay, change the page, on page 27. Line 12, that's just an FYI. That's how we divide it out. FTE 3 staff times 0.35 is 1.50 FTE. 3 people, but they get broke down differently, and this is the state streets portion. Line 14, materials and services, and line 15, purchase services have been adjusted for the removal of the sidewalk grant, so they've been decreased because we're not getting that revenue anymore. Capital outlay expenditures, line 21, equipment has been increased. The water reserve, this fund was established by city council and approved allowable by law. And it establishes a financial reserve fund for the purpose of constructing, reconstructing, repairing, extending, and improving the water system of the city of Gerhart in whole or in part. Resources line 3 is a transfer from the general.
The other question.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure, sorry, I'm like
Okay.
trying to keep up with you.
That's okay.
The state revenue sharing fund for on the left of page 27. That includes sidewalks?
Page 27.
Yeah, State Street
Yeah.
funds would include
Yes.
work and sidewalks,
It could include anything related.
culverts, things to make the city run.
Yes.
Sorry.
Nope, that's good. Line 3 transfers from the general fund and line 4 transfers from the road district fund have been assigned for already collected American Rescue Plan project revenues. And we want to move them here to this water reserve fund because there are some projects that meet the requirement. And so we would like to spend them while we still have an opportunity. We're looking at the hydrochloride
Hypochlorite.
generator and a skid unit. Even if the skid unit maybe doesn't get implemented, we were thinking maybe we might be able to do some engineering and some preliminary work and spend that money that's in there. Historically, the primary revenue source has been a transfer from the water operating fund. A transfer has been allocated, but I always want to remind everybody if that water operating fund isn't meeting targets, then we're not going to transfer any money. Capital outlay, line 19, that's the American Rescue Plan projects. So you can see that it's been increased. And it has to be spent for very specific projects, which is the investment in improving water infrastructure, so. Has to be spent by December 31st, 2024. Or allocated, not, I mean, we can spend it after that, but we have to have some kind of agreement in place for those funds. Transfer line 22, transfer to water operating has no allocations this year. We're hoping that all of the adjustments we have made will keep that fund solvent and we don't need to transfer reserve funds to it this year. Water reserve. Page 29, police car reserve fund. This fund, again, was established for the purpose of maintaining, repairing, and replacing police car or police cars in the city. The primary revenue source is a transfer from the general fund. And an allocation has been added, but again, with the caveat that only if the general fund remains financially stable. Allocations have been made, however, there are no specific purchases scheduled at this time. This is a perfect example of how we appropriate the money, so we're allowed to spend it, even though we don't have a specific project. We have a new police chief comes in, the new police chief evaluates our vehicles. It's a reserve fund, so he needs to ask the council, but we have the budget committee is appropriated, so he was able to come and do some necessary equipment upgrades on our police car vehicles and was able to access this money without having to do a supplementary budget. So that's why we allocate the funds even though they don't have really a specific project. But that was a perfect example of how that works.
Do we get a discount on a car?
We do get a government rate. Yeah, pretty good one, really. Page 35, fire apparatus and equipment reserve fund. So this is the established a financial reserve for the purpose of maintaining, repairing, and replacing fire apparatus of the city of Gerhart. The primary reserves, revenue source is a transfer from the general fund, which has been decreased. And expenditures have been allocated, however, no specific project's been scheduled. So we're not anticipating spending this money. We hope it continues to grow. But if something comes up again, like when our fire truck broke down and needed an expensive repair, he was able to come to the council this last year and request funds to be spent here in order to repair that. And move forward, so. Page 31, hazardous mitigation. It established a financial reserve for the purpose of pre-disaster mitigation used for hazardous mitigation planning and projects to protect life and property from future natural disasters. A grant allocation has been added with coordinating expenditures. This is a grant that is regularly received by the city of Gerhart. Grant expenditures will not be spent without the approval of the grant. The primary revenue source has been a transfer from the general fund, but because there are no specific projects scheduled and there's an adequate pending fund balance, no transfer has been scheduled into this account.
Great. There's no projection of expenditures?
Not like a project that we specifically like a generator or something. I mean, it could be.
I'm getting a generator.
That's off a grant we wrote.
Yeah.
We're trying to spend the money here, we keep getting grants.
Page 32, Public Works Major Equipment Reserve. This fund was established a financial reserve for the purpose of purchasing, maintaining, repairing, and replacing major public works equipment. The primary reserve revenue source is a transfer from the water operating fund. A transfer has been allocated, but again, only if that meets targets. And expenditures have been allocated, however, no specific projects have been scheduled. So Mark hasn't, our public works director hasn't actually had any eye on spending this money, but we allocate just in case. Page 33, the building reserve fund. This fund was established a financial reserve for the purpose of purchasing, repairing, and replacing city buildings. The primary reserve fund is a transfer from the general fund. The transfer has been allocated, but again, if they don't need, we're not transferring. Capital outlay, line 16, public safety facility project has allocations and has been renamed. It was previously the fire police relocation project. City council has prioritized exploring the option of a new public safety building for police and fire, which will require professional services, such as owner's rep and architect. So we have allocated funds in there. Other expenditures have been allocated, but there are no special projects at this time. And then the Gerhart Road District. So the Gerhart Road District is an independent taxing district that the City of Gerhart has. I have not been able to figure out the historical reference, but we've had it as long back as I can find audits. And what it does is it establishes a permanent tax rate on residents in Gerhart that they pay on their property tax. It has its own tax sheet that goes to maintenance and improvement of roads.
I don't have page 34, but.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'm with you, I'm with you.
It
It's
was
a
just
long
because
day,
it's
I
hot.
know, I know. I'm with you.
What's the difference between the State Street and the road district? I mean, are they two different kinds of roads?
No, they're the same roads, it's just different funding sources. So the state street comes from specific revenue sources from the state of Oregon. And the Gerhart Road District comes
I get it.
from implementing a tax base on the residents.
I get it. Thank you.
So, yeah.
There used to be a lot of streets in Gerhart that were just gravel.
Mhm.
And so this fund here has paved almost every one of them except South Ida.
Right, and it is used for paving a lot, this particular fund.
6 cents per thousand. This is what the tax rate of that is.
But it's a separate line from,
Yeah, it's
The property
completely
tax.
separate, yeah. So it does have to have its own special fund, and it does have to have its own notices. That's why we have 2 public notices. And we can include it in our budget and we can move it along, but we have to approve it independently when we approve budgets. So that's why that is. Resources line 2, property tax has been budgeted at 3% increase with a reduction of discounts and other uncollectible amounts. Line 6, miscellaneous has been added due to actual revenue historical data. So we had gotten $20 in 22, 23 miscellaneously back from the state, so I had to put it in here. And line 20, the American Rescue Plan has no allocations in expenditures because in transfers. It does have there because we're gonna transfer to the water reserve fund. But it doesn't have allocations in the expenditures because we're not going to spend them out of there. Does that make sense?
You take it that right, you put it in the water.
Right, yes.
Not the
So
street.
one of them's blank and one of them has the money because we have to move it out. Transfer section 26 to the water reserve has been added. Oh yeah, this will allow the American Rescue grants to be moved to the water reserve for the water improvement projects. No specific projects here are being allocated by the Public Works Director as necessary. Our supplementary information, page 35. This is to provide some additional data on salaries. The distribution of annualized salaries shows all positions, salaries, which include certification of merit pays, amount budgeted, and the distribution of each FTE by fund. The salary schedule shows the position, steps, and the actual fiscal salary amount. And please note that any individual that is still eligible for steps will move over on the salary schedule based on their anniversary date, not the budgeted period of July 1 through June 30. The salary schedule amount will not always match the salary amount in the distribution of annualized salaries, because the salary schedule can be a combination of two. Because if you move over in January, the salary schedule is July 1 to June 30, you get paid that amount. But in January, if you move over, you get one rate, step 2 rate until that date, and then in January, you would move over to step 3. So it's a manipulated amount, even though you can see where they're at.
I have a question. Are steps purely years of service, or is there a merit component?
There is this salary schedule, our employee handbook, it is based on satisfactory performance. So you have to have adequate performance to step over. And then merit is decided upon of our city council, which would be a recommendation from the supervisor. For longevity is traditionally what it's been for.
Okay.
Wait, so we started our new police chief at step 7, 6.
So he'll move, his anniversary date is July 1.
And then what happens after 7?
He just targets cost of living.
Oh,
Unless we give
Unless we
merit
Sure,
after 5.
that's actually tried, which is your discretion. But yes, he would just stay there and receive cost of living. But for the first 7 years, or whatever step you come on, you would receive a step up until that point. There are 2 salary schedule proposed changes. So we talked about that earlier, the chief of police and the division chief operations, they've been adjusted to match same level of responsibilities. Certification and merit increases are amounts given for specialized certifications or merit longevity increases. These amounts are in the distribution of annualized salary, but not in the salary schedule. These types of payments are a flat annualized amount divided equally over the pay cycles, and there is no impact by COLA. And I kind of have a little salary schedule down there of the amounts that we're proposing or that from that year. As per the employee handbook, a wage and salary increase will be established for each job. The schedule will include minimum and maximum wage salary for each job with 7 steps. Any increases to the employee's wage or salary shall be based on satisfactory work performance from the preceding year and is discretionary and subject to approval. Any merit raise amounts, wages, salary, schedule revisions, or cost of living will be decided on by the Gerhart City Council, which they ultimately will do in the duty. The budget.
Does this page include the 3% COLA that you have proposed?
Yes,
And this says COLA 1.032?
yeah, it's using the decimal, if you multiply the salary times 1.032, then it increases it by the dollar amount.
And just to help me remember, we've also, when we talked about the water increase this year, what we also going to talk about perhaps penalties for late payments. Are we going to incorporate that in our discussion this year?
I think those are already incorporated in the stuff.
We don't have late payments.
We don't have a late payment.
Oh, that's right.
We talked about, we would look at that in the future.
Yeah, and we haven't implemented that, but that would be something when we do the resolution that I can propose.
Late payment for what? I'm sorry, I was.
For people that are making late payments on their water, we've never had a late payment fee, and I think we should discuss whether
Okay.
or not, because it's gonna make our job easier.
We have implemented, we did implement warning fees, so, past due notices, when I have to send yellow past due notices, we do have a fee when that is, but nothing if they don't pay or if they continue the balance. That's true.
And if they don't pay, we don't have any.
They eventually get shut off.
Water off.
Right. if they haven't paid.
But then
We'll charge for that.
yeah, but then they pay it up and we start it up again. Meanwhile, she spent a whole lot of staff time tracking it and doing, you know.
Do you have a turn off fee and a turn back on fee?
We do now. We just implemented.
We're trying to catch up to the 20%.
We're
We're a quarter of the way through it. We're trying.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We will. And then page 36, which was a recommendation of Eric, which I really love. And found it to be beneficial in many ways. Is just a summary of everything in the budget. It just kind of summarizes it all in one. And then behind that are just supplementary legal notices and things that we have to have in here. But that is it.
I have a question for
Yes.
Chad. We had talked about system development fees. Is that ever gonna be incorporated into future, do you think?
If the council decides they want to move forward with system development fees, yes.
Yeah.
That's something that is on the goals list with the planning commission.
That would have come in handy when building a emergency services building.
No, we would have then had to charge ourselves for a system development fee.
Oh.
Those fees, yeah, those fees,
Unless
would be-
we give ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but those fees would be good for roads, pipes,
Yeah.
things like that.
So, yeah, I think that would be good when we start next, I don't know, just.
We're gonna have to look at stuff.
Yeah,
Because
look
it
at-
costs, the
yeah.
cost of running this government is outpacing the increase in
Yeah.
that we're getting the tax.
And our population is increasing.
Right.
Right, well.
Demand on staff.
So when they developed the old stable property up there, I mean, he had to put the water lines in there and pay for the hydrants and everything else, right? So that's a form of system.
Correct. So we do get fees out of people when they're putting together subdivisions, partitions and all that. We are working on one right now, we're extending into a hydrant, they have to buy a hydrant. So we're getting more services out of them, but this would be for new people to pay into what the existing residents have already paid for. So seeing as how you folks have been paying taxes in the county or in the city for a long time, new people coming in would pay a little bit extra to go ahead and add in the reserve funds for us to do future projects.
So if you were selling your house and the buyer would have to fund a lot more money?
I have seen those, but most of the time it's in development fees. So you go to build your house and not only do you pay your permit fees and all of that, then you'd also be paying an additional fee for
Services.
Water treatment plants.
So,
Water lines,
does that mean like, the example would be on 9th Street, down here, they don't have a line that goes down 9th. All the lines are run from Cottage, either an inch.
Individual water lines.
Individuals, yeah.
Not a main.
So they're adding more lots down in there. Will the city then charge everybody on that street for a main line that goes down and a hydrant?
no. It really is up to the last person on I mean, if we had a system development charge, yes, but if at this point, it could turn out to be the last person to develop in that type of situation, is
Right.
paying for
But
line.
can you continue to run 1-inch lines or 3/4 inch lines all the way from Cottage, all the way to the end of the street?
Negative.
I mean, that's because that's what's happened already.
That happened in the past, but it doesn't happen anymore.
So those people,
No.
when somebody, so those people that are existing there, which are 2, and the others that come in would have to pay for the line to go down there.
I'm right. Yeah, and the way it would work now, I think, is that the person doing the development would have to pay all of the fees,
I
whatever.
wonder if it's just 3 or 4 lots that is not what you call a development, but selling the lots and.
Serial fashion, if you will, that has gotten us in the past, but I think we've got some things in place now where that can't necessarily happen. We try to hold people accountable for doing the
So
development.
that explained when they go in and get a permit.
Yeah, they get, when they apply for any type of building permit, there's a water application, and on that water application, there's a standard tapping fee, which is for the meter, but that is, the clause is, and Mark looks at them and the planning has just been right on their building plan. That, if any additional fees are incurred, they're the responsibility of the property owner. And Mark usually talks to them, and we've had some pretty significant ones. There was a duplex over by Dairy Queen that went in, and they had to put in a new line, and it happens quite a bit, really. Sevenplex that went over on Highway 101. They have to pay for whatever it costs, no matter how far it is, to tap into our line.
Right.
And we send them a separate invoice.
So what would having a system development fee give us?
They would pay that, plus they would pay 10% to go into their system development fund. So they would pay that on top of.
Like an extra surcharge?
Because other people just pay like the $13.50 that it costs to tap, and then they would pay the $13.50 plus they would pay another 10% for system development.
But I know about the tapping part, but that's from the back of the meter, or that's from the street to the meter. But if your meter is up a cottage and you haven't got a main line, who pays for that main line going down?
Property owner,
Property owner.
yeah, we invoice them. And even if they were gonna put in a main line, they have to probably pay for that too.
And they're responsible for it.
Right.
But the system development charge is a charge on top of that, because we've all been paying for the water treatment stuff, we've all been paying for stuff. And they would be essentially coming in and getting the benefit of everything we paid for without having to pay for it. So that system development charge is their portion of catching them up to what the rest of us have been paying.
I think in Portland, the average is about 30,000 in addition to other permits and the cost of building a building.
And then they beat you up on the water bill. Which is expensive.
Everything is.
And another fee, the police department was telling me that there's several cities in the state of Oregon that have a tapping fee that's like a systems development for public safety. And so just by having in a meter, you have to pay a certain amount of money that goes into a dedicated fund for the public safety.
Yeah.
Different than a system development, which I had never heard of that, but.
We're starting to learn more about these things because, with our low tax rate and our increased expenses, and our 22% increase in people moving into town without an increase in taxes, there's a small increase, but again, they moved into second homes. We're starting to kind of come up to a critical spot where we're gonna have to have some serious conversations. But Justine has done a fantastic job of on this budget, and she's doing it while answering the calls, getting the water bills out, and then all of a sudden, post office thing goes up, It's like, it's been really crazy around here, and I wanted to say thank you to Justine. I basically reviewed the packet, she did it, so.
And to our volunteers that got nominated, that's kind of a rite of passage, just so you know, if you're a new person. Yeah, sign is something, they don't know what the hell it is, but it really is easy, it really is, Justine will take care of you.
Chad, any news on Michael?
No.
Can I ask if there's any other questions on the budget, please? It's an item on the agenda. Mayor, have any questions?
I have no questions, Madam President.
The next budget committee meeting will be
Ooh, it's not Thursday, it's Tuesday,
Tuesday,
please don't forget
May
that.
14th.
Oh, my God.
May 14th, 2024, 6 P.M.
May 14th.
May 14th,
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Confirmed.
Tuesday.
It's on your agenda, at the bottom. of the agenda.
So we're a piece of paper.
It's written as Thursday.
It's gonna be a month.
But it's misstated, it's Tuesday.
14th, okay, yeah. Yeah, I just schedule my life around you.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate
You're
it.
number one in my calendar.
Do we need to move to adjourn? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll give you a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I see that before. That's the mountaineer.